everybody, and welcome along to Motorsport. Recently, we are back after the summer break with episode 22 of the podcast for this year. My name is Jack McKenzie, and joining me on the mic is the wonderful Chris Whitfield and Caitlin Penny commentary, my usual partners in crime. And boy, do we have a lot of news to get through today. So we're going to be discussing some calendars, which is rather interesting. Both the Formula One and the Virgin Australia Supercars calendars have been released. We have some awesome silly season news as well. We have a tiny bit of Formula E news as well. And of course, your miscellaneous stories and points that we will have missed and will be covering at the end of the show. So, guys, welcome along.
Welcome.
Right, so before we get into the news today, we do have a couple of things that do need to be addressed because, while this has been an interesting week in motorsport, it's also been a very sad week for a lot of people, and we've actually lost two people in the motorsport community. So Chris and Caitlin are going to tell you about what's happened during the week with that. Caitlin, muted.
Right. Oh, golly.
Sorry, we've just had a small technical difficulty. We're just going to do that again.
Okay, there we go. That is a lot better. Thanks for telling me that they couldn't hear me there, Jack, because I would not have known otherwise. OBS does that sometimes. Okay, so you'll be able to hear me now. What I was saying was that unfortunately and very, very tragically, earlier today at the Belgian Grand Prix, in a support category, the Formula 2 race, we did have a very serious accident involving three drivers. One of those drivers, Giuliano Alesi, he walked away completely unscathed. Another one of those, Juan Manuel Correa, he is still in hospital. He's in stable but serious condition, and we wait on news of him. And the third driver involved, Antoine Hubert, has unfortunately passed away. I don't know much about Antoine personally. I never met him. I don't know much about his personality, but I can tell you that he was an extremely talented, up-and-coming young driver. Of course, he was last year's GP3/Formula 3 champion. I tipped him last year to be a potential future Formula 1 driver. I think that he definitely had the potential to be, and his two fantastic victories in Formula 2 so far this year have very much shown that that's the case. He won in Monaco, and in Paul Ricard, he was 8th in the championship, and unfortunately he has passed away at 22 years old. I remember Antoine specifically from 2015 when I saw him racing in the Eurocup Formula Renault Championship at Silverstone, and he actually won one of the three races that I saw that weekend. He's always shown that he's had talent, and it's just a huge shame that he has been taken from the sport and from the world so soon.
Rest in peace, Antoine Hubert.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That wasn't the only tragedy that happened during the week.
Sadly, yes. More tragedy struck this past week in Oregon when well-known land speed record driver and mythbuster Jessi Combs lost her life during a land speed record attempt in the Alvord Desert in Oregon. During her career, she twice competed in the prestigious Baja 1000 off-road race, with a best class finish of second in both attempts in 2011 and 2014, and won the Ultra 4 King of the Hammers road race. In 2013, she became a legend of female racers when she broke Lee Breedlove's 48-year-old female land speed record with an official speed clocked at 398.954 miles an hour. 90 miles an hour faster than Breedlove to become the fastest woman on four-wheel. In 2016, she set the female top speed record at 477.59 miles an hour. She was also well known for her television exploits as well. She hosted Spike TV's Extreme 4x4, TLC's Overhaulin', 1001 Car Things You Must Do Before You Die, and All Girls Garage. Perhaps her most famous role, though, was as host of the popular Discovery Channel show Mythbusters, when she filled in as part of the build team in place of Carrie Byron, who during the show's 7th season. Jessi Combs died doing what she did best, what she loved best, trying to break her own land speed record. She is now immortalized as the fastest woman on four wheels, and she will never be forgotten. Jessi Combs was 39 years of age.
So, rest in peace to Jessi Combs. It's not been an easy week in racing this week, actually.
It's weeks like it's days and weeks like this. You just sit back and think, is it too dangerous?
Well,
during weeks like this, it brings everybody together.
Absolutely.
Earlier on, you used the words, is it worth it? And yeah, this is still the sport that we love, and 100% it is worth it. That's why there's a Grand Prix going on tomorrow. It's because Antoine Hubert would have liked nothing more than for us to go racing in his honour, because that's the sport that he loved. That's the sport that we loved. And even though it occasionally causes tragedies like this, it gets safer every time. No one dies in vain anymore. And although it is always absolutely tragic when things like this happen, we use it to move on. We use it to make our sport better and safer, so that days like this never have to happen again, and so that we can enjoy our sport in peace and in safety. And that is why it's worth it, and that's why we're going to carry on with today's show and with Motorsport as a whole. Let's get into it.
Yes,
let's get into it.
Well, since we have been away for so long, we do have some quick updates on some things that have happened. So first of all, as you'll probably all know, the Albon and Gasly situation happened, with Gasly and Albon swapping their respective seats. Several races happened in various series, including IndyCar, NASCAR Xfinity Series, well, NASCAR Cup Series as well, IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, etc. It was also announced that Fernando Alonso would most likely be doing the Dakar Rally next year, which is very interesting.
He has been confirmed with Toyota.
Confirmed, exactly. And there were, as I said before, lots of races, including the NASCAR road course races the NASCAR Xfinity road course races, which were actually really, really good. And also, there was an enormous crash at the IndyCar race at Pocono, which got a lot of people talking. Also, some interesting news, some IndyCar/Supercar news. James Hinchcliffe and Alexander Rossi will be coming down under with Walkinshaw Andretti to compete in the Bathurst 1000 as a wildcard entry. So that's very, very interesting. Dale Earnhardt Jr. Thankfully walked away from a plane crash with his entire family and even the family dog. So that's good to see that he was able to walk away from that.
In fact, he's racing at the very second.
Yes.
He's racing at Darlington as we speak.
And to add to the places that Chris is banned from, Chris is now banned from Florida.
Am I?
How's that happened, Chris?
How have I been banned from Florida?
If you remember, when we were doing another podcast, well, I think we were talking about Florida, and well, Chris subsequently got himself banned from Florida. And on the subject of that, I do another podcast.
Please elaborate.
Well, on my other podcast, which I started up a couple of weeks ago, I had Chris on the second episode, and we talked about Florida, and well, we can add Chris to the places that the places that he's banned. So he's banned from France, probably Argentina by this point, considering how much he's talked about Jose Maria Lopez. He's banned from Florida as well, and various other places across the globe. I think I'm going to have to make a list of places where the members of either podcast are banned from visiting. And on the subject of that other podcast, if you're tuning in now, that other podcast is called Captain Crunch's Current Affair, where we cover ludicrous news stories that have occurred either throughout the week or recently. And I believe those are all the quick updates that we needed to know from the past few weeks. So, without further ado, if you're ready with the jingle, it's time for your Red Line headlines.
Red line, you know you wanna. You know you want it. Headline.
I'm waiting for my
headline. It's Redline headlines. There we go. Sorry, I did have my finger on the button. It just took a while to load, so that's not really my fault. That's my computer's. Whatever the case, there you go. Redline headlines. Jack, take it away.
Chris takes the segment.
Chris, take it away.
One of us. I've been called Jack in the past. And I wasn't floating on a door. I was not floating on a door in front of Kate Winslet. But let's move on. It was a Porsche clinic during the Michelin GT Challenge at Virginia International Raceway, with the victor being the 911 Porsche of Nick Tandy and Patrick Pilet, who took advantage of an excellent start to go from fourth on the grid to second by turn 1. In GTD, it was the first victory of 2019 for the Riley Motorsports Mercedes-AMG GT3 of Ben Keating and late model racer Jerome Bleekemolen. And this time, they'll get to keep it. Moving to IndyCar, Takuma Sato made one of the best strategy calls of the season to stay out during the final yellow to win the Bomarino Group 500K at Worldwide Technology Raceway at Gateway. He held off Ed Carpenter by 0.039 seconds, by 3/100ths of a second, with Tony Kanaan rounding out the podium, proving once and for all that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Turning to the NASCAR Xfinity Series, now Christopher Bell took advantage of strategy and a late caution caused by Brandon Jones's deflating tire and not pulling off into an escape road to win his first NASCAR Xfinity Series road race, the C-Tech Manufacturing 180 at Road America in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. Christopher Bell won over Austin Cindric and Tyler Reddick. And in the Camping World and in the NASCAR Gander Mountain Truck Series, Brett Moffitt held off Alex Tagliani to cap off a dominant Chevrolet Silverado 250 at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park in Bowmanville, Ontario. The results were Moffitt, Tagliani, and third place going to Ben Rhodes, driving his number 99 Ford, and that are your red line headlines.
Well, it's been quite a week over the past couple of weeks. The IMSA race at Virginia was fantastic. I have to say that was thoroughly entertaining. So was the IndyCar race at Gateway actually as well. In fact, I haven't seen the truck race, but I'm assuming that it was rather good. And so was the Xfinity race actually.
Unfortunately, it was quite dull. Normally, like in the 6 years we've held truck races in Motorsport, Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, we have always produced either a close or, well, you've seen the footage finish to our races, but this year just Brett Moffitt won by 5 seconds, which is a country mile on a road course, and unfortunately it wasn't as exciting as I would have hoped. I was kind of disappointed after that.
We should probably talk about the unbelievably close finish that happened in IndyCar. My goodness.
Yes, sir.
0.39 seconds between Takuma Sato and Ed Carpenter. That was a proper race to the line. That was absolutely superb. And then Joseph Newgarden went for a spin at the end, which a lot of people have, pinned on Santino Ferrucci, which was mostly his fault, actually. But then again, that might just come down to inexperience. But then...
And then Newgarden decided to confront Ferrucci over the incident. Like, the thing is, I saw the replay and I looked at it closely. Newgarden did that himself. That was his fault.
Yeah.
And I'm not turning... What the heck?
Okay, if you don't know why they just burst out laughing, it's because I had to shout something, but I did mute myself on the podcast, so I was professional. So, yeah, don't shout at me. The funny thing is, this is going to make not really that much sense to the listeners. Sorry about that, guys.
I love out of context.
I interrupted one of you. My mistake.
That's okay. Okay, so back to the Ferrucci incident. I'm not a Ferrucci apologist by any stretch of the imagination, but I do need to get my Kimoa hat on. And it's just fallen. There we go. There we go. Now I'm wearing my Kimoa hat.
Right.
But yeah, that was Newgarden. That was on Newgarden. He should have known that Ferrucci, like, he'd been following Ferrucci for a few laps, and he washed up Ferrucci was understeering. He got the aero washed up the racetrack, and basically went to the grass to avoid running into him.
And also, Santino Ferrucci got quite a lot of hate actually because of that incident. And then people saying, "Oh, every single time that Santino Ferrucci he causes controversy." To be fair, this was a WTF1 comment section, so that kind of makes sense. But
WTF1.
Yes, well, I'm assuming
I take the credible journalists. And that's my savage take of the day.
Yes, and a lot of these when a lot of these people say every single time Santino Ferrucci gets into a racing car, he causes controversy. That simply isn't true because they haven't seen. I mean, yes, there has been controversy when Santino Ferrucci has gotten into a racing car, but probably. Well, only a little bit more than most other racing drivers anyway, but he has driven absolutely superbly this year, and I think that needs to be recognized, other than just him making a mistake that caused another driver to spin out.
Including this weekend.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
Yesterday, in fact, the
took a leaf out of Takumi Fujiwara's book. That was fantastic.
One-handed. Like
exactly.
I will confess that I do confess that Ferrucci, his attitude putting his attitude aside, is actually quite brilliant behind the wheel, and I never thought I'd ever say that. But he's been absolutely brilliant, hasn't he, this year?
He has definitely been. Anyway, if we don't have anything more to say on any of those events, we should probably move on to our feature stories. And we start off with a story that's both an IndyCar and a Formula One story. So, Chris, would you like to tell us about that?
I shall. Marcus Eriksen will not be at the IndyCar race in Portland this weekend due to the fact that he has been called up by the Alfa Romeo Formula One team for the Belgian Grand Prix. Many speculated that he was perhaps replacing Antonio Giovinazzi, but in actual fact, it was due to the fact that Kimi Räikkönen had picked up a leg injury over the summer break. Eriksen is simply standing by in case Räikkönen cannot race. That means that his Schmidt-Peterson Motorsport seat this weekend will be filled by Connor Daly for the Portland race. Now,
Yes.
It's quite disappointing, actually, because we know now that he's not going to be able to race in F1, so he's missing that IndyCar race for pretty much no reason, but I suppose they didn't know that at the time. It reminds me of, I suppose completely the opposite, but it reminds me of when Pierre Gasly had to miss a Grand Prix to go to defend his Super Formula crown, and then couldn't even do that because the race was cancelled. Yeah, that would have been back in, I think, 2017. But still. Also, something that not many people know about this is that Lando Norris also picked up a leg injury over the summer. He damaged a tendon in his leg and was actually walking around in, I think it was like a little plastic leg brace type thing for a while. But he has fully recovered in time for the Grand Prix, and I tell you what, it's very lucky that happened to him over the summer break. Same with Räikkönen by the sound of it.
I was going to say, I thought it would have been weird if Lando Norris had picked up a bone injury of some kind, because considering all the milk that he drinks.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. Anyway, so, but I believe Kimi Räikkönen also said that it would be foolish not to have a third driver on standby if one of the drivers was a maybe to race. So, I mean, Alfa Romeo, they were using their contract just to make sure they would at least have somebody in the car. But I mean, that's good news for Connor Daly because that's him picked up another drive. And I'd be surprised if he does not get a full-time drive with somebody in the next couple of years.
Yeah, because honestly, he's too talented to not be in a full-time ride. Like he's one of those drivers that does a good solid job and you can always depend on him. But like you can always depend on him to bring the car home. And I really hope he gets a good deal. Maybe in the second I'm not really sure where. Maybe the third Rahal seat that's opening up, or somewhere. Someone please hire Connor Daly.
He's higher. He needs to walk around with a sign he needs to walk around with a sign on him that says driver for hire or something like that. I don't know. I mean, he definitely does reserve a full-time drive. And then we also do have a lot of Formula One news, just normal Formula One news, no IndyCar crossover here. And we start
Normal Formula One news, though, it's quite big.
I mean, as normal as Formula One news can get. So, Caitlin, would you like to tell us about that?
So, let me just get the document open so I actually know what we're talking about. It is the 2020 schedule, is that right? 2020 schedule.
That's correct.
Great. Okay. It is a 22 race schedule, which will be the longest in F1 history, and I think that is an awful idea, since aren't they trying to, like, cut costs or something? Yeah. But, anyway, we are going to have the normal races starting the season, Australia followed by Bahrain, but then we head off to Vietnam and the Netherlands, with China between them, of course. Vietnam, of course, with the new street circuit in Hanoi. It's an interesting looking track on paper, although I don't really think it's going to be as good as people expect it to be. Then again, you know, haven't seen the track in person yet, or, well, haven't seen any car driving around it at all, so we'll see. Zandvoort, I am not looking forward to. I think it's going to be an awful idea to race there again, and I don't think that everything is going to be ready in time. It'll be interesting to see what they do with it. All I know is that they're going to have to make some very, very big changes to actually make it a proper F1 circuit at all. The Spanish Grand Prix is staying on the calendar. There was speculation that it would leave, and that Zandvoort would replace it, although apparently they are both going to be on the calendar next year, separated by just 1 week. We have a back-to-back well, not quite to back, because then Monaco is 2 weeks afterwards. We have Baku, we have Montreal, Le Castellet, unfortunately, is staying. Spielberg and Silverstone, luckily, are staying. Great, they saved Silverstone, just as we all hoped would happen. Budapest is still there. Spa-Francorchamps is still there. Monza is still there, although they haven't signed the contract yet, so not entirely confirmed, although it is more or less confirmed. And then, of course, more usual races: Singapore, Sochi, Suzuka, Austin, Mexico City, Sao Paulo. You remember earlier this year they claimed that Rio would be on the calendar, hosting the Brazilian Grand Prix. Yeah, that's not going to happen. The plan is still to race there in 2021, although I very much doubted that they would for 2020, and I think my concerns have been realised, and then we are going to have the customary finale on November the 29th at the Yas Marina circuit. So there you go, the 2020 Formula One calendar.
The only thing I will say, it's a bit long.
Yeah. Like,
there's too many races.
I really think
there's far too many races.
I really think that 20 should have been the maximum, because 20 is fine, and any more than that is just adding cost. You know, it's a nice round number, 20. Just stick with 20. Like, no one really needs more. I love Formula One and everything, but if you're going to make it too expensive so the lower teams can't compete, then just don't, please. Yeah, I would. I could do with the calendar we have now, minus France and the Netherlands.
And I would actually, I'd love to go back to the old 16 or 17 race calendar. Because I grew up with that, and B, bring back Imola.
I think 20 is acceptable, especially since, you know, that gives you room to play with circuits. You can have more like street circuits alongside the old school circuits without them cancelling each other out. But then, of course, when you start going over that, it starts to get a bit costly, and, you know, a bit jam-packed, and a bit like NASCAR. And NASCAR only works because the cars are cheaper than F1 cars. So yeah, don't do that.
And
unless you want to make Formula One cars just like simple things with a massive V8 in the back, which I wouldn't will necessarily be object to, but I'd say leave it as is and probably less.
But
Well, that shouldn't happen. I just think that the calendar's wrong. Basically, it's too long. Anyway.
I think actually also, I'm with you. I'm kind of apprehensive about Hanoi. Like, there's been no testing for it because it hasn't been built yet. And
Hanoi's been built. It's the
Hanoi's
circuit
been
that
built.
hasn't.
Well,
Oh yeah,
no, not the
Hanoi.
city of Hanoi.
The city has been built.
The city of Hanoi has been built, has it?
Indeed, yeah.
Hanoi, big think.
But
Top Gear did an episode there.
I don't know. Absolutely.
Yes, it is.
I don't think that the Hanoi circuit will race very well, I'm afraid, and I'm glad that for the Brazilian Grand Prix they've come to their senses and actually kept it in Sao Paulo. Like, mind you, with everything that's been going on in Brazil as of late, what with the arsonist fascist that's in office right now, I think that they need to actually think of something else.
And with that, you've just been banned from Brazil.
We already were banned from Brazil.
Were we? Okay.
Oh, Bolsonaro should be. No, it's okay. It's okay. That it's only a part-time ban until Bolsonaro gets called to The Hague. But
Got it.
Motorsport recently is back on.
Motorsport recently, the only political racing show. Whatever the case. Yeah. I think it's less that they came to their senses and more that they realised, oh, there isn't a track there.
Yeah.
I knew it was just basically a delusion, basically the delusions of a tin pot dictator. That's all that it was. I called it when
We all
I actually
did.
called it when the
We all did.
Yeah, it was just a delusional exercise that wasn't going to work. Plus, well, basically, they could just. Actually, is the Yacarapagua or
Hakarapagua.
That
Hakarapagua
one.
Is that's the old circuit that was on the Rio de Janeiro site. Then they built the Olympic Park on it when the Olympics went there in the 90s, I think. And now they are planning to build a new circuit on the old Hakarapagua site. That is now planned for 2021 for the Grand Prix, whereas before it was planned for 2020. But yeah, I think we've spoken enough about that now.
Well, there's some other Formula One news as well, starting with the fact that Valtteri Bottas has signed a contract extension with Mercedes F1 for the 2020 season. He will not be replaced by Esteban Ocon because he will be going elsewhere, and Chris is going to tell us about that.
Moving swiftly on, yes, Mr. Ocon. The curious case of Esteban Ocon has been confirmed. He will return to Formula One in 2020 with Renault for the 2020 season, replacing the Hulk, Nico Hulkenberg.
I'm surprised because I very much thought that Renault's lineup was safe. I thought that Bottas was safe as well because I knew that Toto Wolff has a lot of support for Bottas, despite what the media says. And I expected that Ocon would be on the grid for Williams next year alongside George Russell. However, it appears that Toto Wolff is even more powerful than I thought, and he's obviously paid Renault quite a bit. And Renault have decided to drop Hulkenberg in favour of Ocon. In my opinion, quite a shame, because although I do rate Ocon as a driver, he's a decent F1 driver. I say decent, but what I really mean is, yeah, he's pretty darn quick. I'd say that Hulkenberg is even better, and I think that Hulkenberg is underrated. He won the Formula 1.5 championship last year. You know, the unofficial
Yes.
championship for drivers, not in the top 3 teams. And
And
go ahead.
he won Le Mans for Porsche.
He did indeed. So, I honestly think it would be a huge shame if we didn't see Nico Hulkenberg on the grid next year, and I hope that we do, even though it would probably only be for Williams. But anyway, there you go.
And I will say on Ocon, I think this is all part of a bit of a coup. Like, give Ocon a seat. Toto's probably thinking far into the future.
Oh, totally, he is. Yeah.
Because once Lewis is ready to retire in 2020 something, once he's ready to retire, he can just try and trade him back to Mercedes to replace him. It would be the next logical step.
Yeah, Toto doesn't want Esteban to be out of the sport for too long. I was actually quite surprised leading up to this year when Bottas got to keep his seat and Ocon didn't go into that seat, because if you remember, Bottas didn't score a single victory last year when Hamilton went on to win the championship, and I thought for sure that Ocon was going to be elevated into that seat. I was very, very surprised when it was announced that he wouldn't, and I think Bottas had signed a 3-year contract for Mercedes, but still I was surprised that it wasn't cut off sooner than that. Whatever the case, Ocon.
I think actually, what I compare this to kind of is the NBA, where basically someone would use a second, like someone would go to another team, player would go to another team when their first one isn't available, and then go to it once they which is exactly what Kawhi Leonard did. He went to he wanted to go to the LA Clippers to be closer to home, but he couldn't get a slot there, so he went to the Toronto Raptors. They won the championship in the NBA. Then Kawhi got traded to the Clippers, to where he wanted to go in the first place. So basically, it's this whole game of like,
it's like that, but the entire thing's controlled by Toto Wolff, basically.
Toto Wolff, I will give him credit on this, and that's not something you hear often from me. Giving Toto Wolff credit. He's a very shrewd businessman. He's a very shrewd man when it comes to his drivers, like especially his future drivers. I predict that once Lewis Hamilton is ready and announces his retirement from the sport, there's your replacement. He's just wearing yellow overalls instead of silver ones.
So now the fact that Nico Hulkenberg's out of a drive now, and that really sucks. But I've had an idea.
I'd love to see him in WEC.
But I think there might be somewhere else where he might go. Now, this is just a prediction. Considering the fact that Romain Grosjean's seat is a bit of we don't know what's going on there, perhaps Nico Hulkenberg might end up in a Haas seat.
He might.
I can see that.
He might, but the problem with that is that, of course, the whole thing with Haas is that this season, their drivers have been coming together and clashing and not getting on. They want drivers who will get on, which means not Magnussen and Hulkenberg.
Yes.
Yeah, now you remember Hungary 2017.
But it's also Do you want drivers that are going to get on, or do you want drivers that will probably make the most out of that Haas car more than anyone else can?
Drivers who make the most
Yes.
out of that Haas car while also getting along. So,
Well, okay, maybe Günther Steiner needs to sit them in front of a marriage counsellor or something and get them to make a...
that is
Formula One couples counseling.
that is a fantastic idea, and honestly, an amazing image. Thank you so much for that, Jack.
So,
Okay.
so let's get down to business here. You are upset with him for clattering into your car. Is that correct?
Oh, that's wonderful, Chris. Jolly good. So anyway, yeah, I think
And
that
yes, that's apparently what a marriage counselor what a couples counselor sounds like.
I think
Thankfully,
that
touch wood, I never had to go to one.
I think that if Nico Hulkenberg's still in Formula One next year, it's probably going to be with Williams, unfortunately. And I just hope that if that is the case, Williams is stronger next year. But I don't think they will be that strong.
Maybe they need to
You know-
maybe they need to
you
dust off the FW14 and just get that on the grid. I don't know.
You know, I
That'd be
could
an idea.
actually like if Hulk doesn't wind up running in Formula One next year, I could see him potentially going to WEC for the in a hypercar.
Yeah, totally. I can see that happening. So, one driver who we
perhaps.
do know will be on the Formula One grid next year will be Sergio Perez. He has signed a 3-year extension with Racing Point, making him one of the most loyal drivers in Formula One history, if you count Racing Point and Force India as the same team, which I do. So, Sergio Perez, of course, will be with Force India / Racing Point for 9 seasons by the end of this term. That's three-year deals. That's Pierluigi Martini levels of commitment and dedication, loyalty to a team. That's the word I'm talking about. And he's had a dodgy start this year, so it's good to see him get his contract signed early, get his future sorted, so he can just concentrate on what he's doing now. I don't think it's maybe the best thing for his career, because I don't think that Racing Point will ever be competitive enough to win championships. But I do think that it's good that he's still going to be on the grid.
And I love the fact that like I've always liked Sergio Perez. I thought he was I think he's actually one of the most underrated drivers in Formula One at the moment, because he basically he doesn't just make up the numbers. He does impress whenever he's behind the wheel, and a lot of people write him off like as this like crash-worthy pay driver, but
Sergio Perez,
he's actually
crash-worthy.
got a lot of
Maybe he had a bit of a hot-headed streak of races in 2013, but since then I certainly wouldn't call him a crash-worthy driver.
No. I'm just saying, like, I don't know where I was going with this, but
I understand.
It's not like his McLaren gig. Let's just put it that way.
People forget that Sergio Perez, as much as he has been a little bit anonymous recently, he has always been one of the most important drivers on the silly season market, and also alongside that, since Formula 1.5 became a real noticeable split in 2016, he's been the top driver of those twice, 2016, 2017. He is one of the most competitive drivers in the midfield, if not the most competitive. And honestly, I see him as probably one of the top 5 most valuable drivers on the grid.
Absolutely, and I think he got a bad rap when he came from ran for McLaren, but since then he's genuinely impressed. He's impressed, well, me, of course, but like he's been genuinely impressive.
And I think people have been actually speculating that he was going to make a move to Ferrari. Well, they've been speculating that for years, actually. So he is definitely a genuinely impressive driver.
Yeah, and I think he's underrated. But anyway, that's that.
He reminds me of Heinz-Harald Frentzen.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah,
if that makes any sense. Like, he reminds me of Frentzen.
A good driver in poor cars. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and actually makes poor cars or midfield cars competitive.
So that's the Formula One news. Jack, I believe you have some supercars news. Sorry, Chris.
Yes.
We do have some supercars news, and I think we haven't covered supercars enough on this channel, so it's about time we gave it some love. Because the calendar for the 2020 Virgin Australia Supercars Championship was announced during the week. So here are some of the main talking points. The format for the super sprint races have changed, with the races being extended from 120 to 200 kilometers. 14 events will make up the Supercars calendar for next season, one less than last year. However, because of the extra mileage in the super sprint races, we'll actually see more Supercars kilometers raced next season. The Auckland Super Sprint has been moved forward to round 4, where it was previously at round 11. Phillip Island and Queensland Raceway will no longer be on the calendar, but nobody cares because Sydney is back! Which I'm very, very happy about. So that will be returning. So that will see the return of the Super Night at Sydney Motorsport Park. And if you've ever wanted to meet me, I'll probably go. So you can come and say hello to me if you actually know who you're looking for.
Well, Jack, it's interesting you say that. Because don't get your hopes up. I'm not actually coming to Sydney, but my next sim race in Tin Tops is at Sydney Motorsports Park. It's the first time I've ever raced there. So I don't know, like, if you can find a way to kind of transport yourself into the virtual world when you're there, then I don't know, maybe we can like say hi.
If they're streaming it, then I could probably say hi on the stream.
Oh yeah.
Well, if you paid for my
Wait, no.
If you paid for my airline tickets, then I'd go in a heartbeat.
Yes, just so long as somebody else is paying for them. But I don't know. When it comes to emptying your own pockets, I don't know. But anyway, right. So
money.
Hello,
I like money. But
that being said about Sydney Motorsport Park, the endurance season will be starting off with a 500-kilometer race at the Bend. The race at the Bend will replace Sandown as an endurance race. However,
No.
Sandown will still be on the calendar, but now in a super sprint format. So we get 2 days of Sandown stuff.
No,
okay, Chris?
No.
Try
That's
to make
like
me go to
replacing...
rehab, and they say...
Amy Winehouse hates me, but, or hated me.
Oh, Chris. Okay, carry on.
That's like replacing... That's like Sandown always has been one of the highlights of the endurance championship in supercars, and honestly, I don't see the Bend producing a better race than Sandown, because I'm a traditionalist.
Apparently, Sandown has been knocking on heaven's door for the past couple of years. So, I think that was sort of well, people were expecting that. Anyway, Supercars are also planning to run the Gold Coast 600 under lights. Now, this has stirred up some controversy with people who live in the Gold Coast, not really liking the idea that it's going to be extended till 9:30.
If they don't like it, they can move.
I think somebody even went as far to say that they were smelly and noisy. Anyway, so and I think somebody was like, "Think of the children, think of the dogs and the cats," and I think that is actually a quote from the ABC. And it's just like, what are they going to do at 9:30? It's like, well, you know,
They're
cats and
gonna
dogs.
race.
Anyway, so I'd like to point out that while she may have been criticized by another news podcast for exposing the names of secret agents, I don't know which news podcast they could possibly be referring to, but anyway, Anastasia Palaszczuk, who is the Queensland Premier, actually got that right this time, yes, really does seem to like her motorsport, as her government has actually backed this event, and I've also been in talks with IndyCar, with the possibility of bringing the Gold Coast Indy 200 or 300, I can't remember the name of the event, but they're saying that they want to bring that back as well. So
I thought that fell through. I thought that fell through.
Well, anyway, Anastasia was the one who was backing that. So, I mean, even if it did fall through, she seems to like her motorsport, because apparently it's good for stonks. Anyway, right. So that's all. Those are the main calendar changes. I could actually read out the full calendar if you'd like me to, if I can just find it.
On Sandown, like I'm not a fan of the fact that I'm a traditionalist. Like I enjoy Sandown, running the 500 miles, especially like the 500 kilometers, especially now that it's a retro round. When is the retro round this year?
Don't know.
Like when is Sandown this year?
Sandown, it is. I think it's in the same. Well, it's in roughly the same time slot it normally is. So we'll probably have one more retro round at Sandown, and I'm not sure what they'll do with the retro round. Anyway, right, I have the full calendar up here, so I can just read out all the events. So the preseason test day, be at the Bend. Then the first race of the season is the Superloop Adelaide 500. Then the Melbourne 400. Then the Tyre Power Tasmania Super Sprint, the ITM Auckland Super Sprint. As I mentioned before, the Auckland round has been moved forward. Then there's the Pertec Perth Super Night, then the Truck Assist Winton Super Sprint, and the Wattpack Townsville 400, followed by the Bet Easy Darwin Triple Crown. Then the Sydney Super Night, which I'm very, very happy about. That's going to be in August 28th to the 30th. And then there's the Bend OTR 500 round, followed by the Super Cheap Auto Bathurst 1000, the Vodafone Gold Coast 600, and that's the end of the endurance rounds. Then following that, it will be the Penrite Oil Sandown 400 with the 200-kilometer sprint races on presumably Saturday and Sunday, and then the season is rounded off once again with the Coates Hire Newcastle 500, which I went to in 2018, and I still haven't made the video for that yet. But Caitlin did release Formula One highlights 2 years after the race happened, so I'll take her mentality and say better late than never.
It's okay. It's only August.
It's almost been a year since I actually did that, but anyway, and that's the end of the Supercars.
And
news.
Also, I wouldn't mind anyone else here mind if they perhaps did a sprint race at Bathurst as well as the 1000.
I think we already have enough supercars racing at Bathurst. There's 1,000 Ks of it there. I think you don't want too much of a good thing.
Well, they ran. Oh, of course. They did, however, run a sprint race at Mount Panorama in, I believe, 1993. They ran the Australian Touring Car Championship in it.
Yeah. So I'm very happy that Sydney's returning to the calendar. I was very disappointed this year when Sydney Motorsport Park was taken off the calendar, and I'm very, very glad that it has returned. And I'd say that rounds off the Supercars news, because now we have some Formula E news. Chris, would you like to tell us about that?
Yes. It is a car reveal Porsche has revealed their car for the 2019-2020 ABB Formula E season. The car is called the 99X and is liveried in the traditional Porsche racing colors of red, white, and black, and features sponsorship from Vodafone, Tag Heuer, and Hugo Boss. The 99X will be piloted by Porsche factory drivers Neil Yanni and Andre Lott.
Yes. So Porsche, they've gotten their car revealed, and now we're waiting on Mercedes to, well, really see what that car looks. Well, or have we already seen it, or is that just like a test livery?
No, the Mercedes has actually... Well, the problem is Mercedes has had a Formula E car for years. It's numbered 44 and 77. Driven by a Brit and a Finn. Driven by a Finnish gentleman that likes porridge and a British wannabe rapper.
Are you implying that the Mercedes
Caitlin...
Formula 1 cars are Formula E cars? This is requiring enormous think right now.
I love... Ain't I a stinker? But,
Freya Edwards was disillusioned with the fact that the car reveal was a painful thing to watch because it took freaking ages.
My friend Mike was complaining about the same thing as well. He says he was like shouting at the screen. I didn't see it, but anyway, at least you got a good-looking car out of it.
I didn't see it because I just wait till it comes out in the news and I don't have to wait to do an entire car reveal. So
very true, very true.
Well, actually, it took nearly an hour for Mazda to unveil its DPI.
But then that's entirely worth it though, because it's Mazda.
Oh, it's Mazda, and it's Mazda, and the
Sport recently brought to you by Sydney Mazda. Get your new Mazda 3 from the Mazda dealership.
But the problem is, it's really not worth it because all the Formula E cars look almost, well, they look exactly the same in terms of the bodywork. The only thing that actually changes is the internals and the livery,
which you can only really, in the internals you can only really see if the engine cover blows off.
So what
what happened this weekend much like what happened this weekend with Lance Stroll.
Yeah. So what that actually...
Sorry.
So what that actually was not a car reveal at all. It was a livery reveal, which makes it even less worthwhile.
So basically what Porsche have done is that they've pulled the Sigmatech Alpine. They have taken the standard Dallara chassis. I believe it's made by Dallara. They've taken the standard Dallara chassis and they put a Porsche badge on it and called it an entirely new car.
Does Dallara do Formula E?
Fairly sure. Yeah, Dallara does Formula E and Orica does the LMP2 chassis.
Used to be Renault who... Because the first Formula E...
Renault made the electric motors, Dallara made the chassis.
Okay, alright.
Sure.
Now everybody else makes their own electric motors and just uses the Dallara chassis.
Yeah, the Spark SRT05E.
That was
what
the
it's
one.
called.
Yeah. Okay.
If we can move on from Formula E, because there's good news!
Good news?
What?
Well, it was actually announced that this month, even though it's the end of August, well, it's not even the end of August, it's now September the 1st, that the Dacia Sandero was the third best-selling car model of July in Europe.
That is fantastic.
Great.
Right.
Moving on.
Anyway, it's time to move on to
I've got the jingle.
to our favorite segment, and Caitlin has the jingle in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, I've just played it like 3 times already. Let's go again.
Miscellaneous stories and points that we
It's
missed
time
and for recovering ITM. Boo.
Chris, you sprang in the middle of it once again. Golly. Okay, never mind. Whatever.
Did it.
You get the picture. It's you get the picture. Right. Who's starting?
I can start if you'd like. because we actually have more supercars news. The Ford Mustang supercar made its US track debut at the IMSA race at VIR, and the car was actually a converted Ford Falcon that was shipped to the US at the end of 2014, and was then, of course, converted into a Falcon due to some supercars regulations. And the car was piloted by Ford factory driver Ryan Briscoe around the Virginia International Raceway, and I believe that probably excited some IMSA fans that also like supercars.
And I believe actually that Roger Penske owns that chassis, so it's one of his.
We have an incoming shameless plug. Chris, would you like to tell us about our next story?
Yes. As I discussed last week on another podcastular program.
Podcastular program? That is perfect.
Podcastular program.
Which is called what? Bear in mind, people have actually
Captain
said
Crunch.
that I'm very good at shameless plugs.
Captain Crunch's Current Affair, sponsored by Kale's Brill Cream. And Sitwell Eyebrow Tonic, because why should caterpillars have all the fun? An 8-year-old boy in Germany took his mother's car out for a joyride.
Right.
And he went 140 kilometers an hour, and has impressed us motorsport fans, and will probably most likely be hired as the third coming of Michael Schumacher.
Was it Max Verstappen?
Oh, it was he was German.
Okay. What was it? Never mind.
German boy who is I'm assuming the protege of Florida Man. Anyway, right, moving on from our shameless plug.
Was he nicknamed Schumacher?
I don't know, he drove a Volkswagen Golf.
Had the service.
Okay, and you say like he didn't cause an accident or anything, he just drove his mother's car.
No, he crashed into another car.
Okay,
but
that's
he's
not
actually done. Yeah, he's actually done this. He's actually done this twice. The first time he didn't crash. He didn't crash, and the second time he did. But he actually meant. But that wasn't before he drove 50 kilometers. Anyway, right.
50 kilometers, and also, I believe he was clocked at 150 miles or 115 miles an hour.
110, and he went at 140 k's an hour. Anyway, I think that should be the end of our that should be the end of our shameless plug. Just so you remember the name, Captain Crunch's Current Affair, where we discuss ludicrous news stories. So if you ever get, I don't know, if you ever become sick of motorsport recently, which I'm not sure why you would, you can go and listen to that. Anyway, back to actual motorsport news, because we have some DTM news, if anyone would like to tell us about that.
So, DTM, the Deutsche Tourenwagen Masters, I believe, is in discussion with Monza and about potentially adding it to the 2020 calendar, meaning, of course, the DTM is becoming less of a German national championship. But then again, it was never specifically Germany in the first place. I think it's going to be quite exciting at Monza, to be honest.
Yes.
This recent talk of like having races outside of Germany, you know what it reminds me a bit? The FIA ITC.
Yeah, definitely. That was a precursor to the DTM.
Well, let's see if I can actually remember what it meant.
International Touring Cup?
No, not Information Terminals Corporation.
What the heck?
The International Touring Car Championship, yes.
That's like basically what I said, but anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So that will consist of very, very fast cars going down a very, very fast straight on a very, very fast track.
Sounds good.
One news.
I'm interested.
Well, we have some Formula One news. Well, I don't know who many how many people actually care about this story anymore.
I do. It's one of the best Formula One stories of the year. We're talking, of course, about Rich Energy's partnership with Haas. Still one of the funniest stories I have ever seen in Formula One history. The future of the sponsorship deal between Haas and Rich Energy will be decided before the Singapore Grand Prix. I don't know.
And also, Rich Energy has now apparently got a new CEO.
Good. I hope
It's old one.
It's old one.
It's old one.
What?
Yeah, apparently William Story is back,
Where have you heard that?
Back, which
which makes me want to put a claw hammer into my skull.
Where have you heard
means
that?
which means more incoherent rambling on Twitter, if that is the case.
Yeah, I've not heard that anywhere.
I heard it on.
He's still. I found tweets about him still being like the founder, but I haven't seen anything about. See, never mind. Whatever the case, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I'm very surprised that the
here it is. William Story has taken control of Rich Energy successor Lightning Volt and becomes a director in it. Oh boy.
Okay. Well, hopefully he doesn't have much to do with the Twitter account. Actually, no. Hopefully for us, he does.
Oh yes, we need some Motorsport recently content. I think we should actually.
And I need a sedative.
You know what? If he is back in, we need a new segment called, I don't know. What would we even call that segment actually? Rich Energy being up
Stories.
Stories. Oh, yes, that's fantastic. It's very good.
I like it.
Right. Okay. If he does any more stuff, we'll have a new segment called Stories. Well, now we've been debating that. Have we actually have we actually said this story?
Yeah, so basically they're debating the future of the brand's partnership with Haas. Of course, the investors want to save the deal. Haas probably don't after everything that happened with William Story, especially if Story is still going to be involved. So we'll see. I'm very surprised that brand is still on that car, to be honest. Whatever the case, Freya Edwards says, don't like Rich Energy as a brand company. Yeah, I can agree with you there. But it tastes pretty good. Well, actually, that's interesting.
About to say.
Because a lot of people say that it tastes pretty much exactly the same as Red Bull, and that basically all they've done is taken Red Bull, maybe added like a sweetener or something, and then passed it off as a different drink altogether. So I'm not entirely sure quite how true that is, or what's actually in it. They're being very secretive about that. Wonder why. Then again, okay, in their defense, all energy drink companies do. Yeah, I just think it's all been a big mess so far this year, and I would be very surprised if any F1 team actually let them have their logo on the side of their car anymore, even though it's for money.
Money! Anyway, so...
Money!
Right, I feel like Freya Edwards, her debut on this channel, should actually, well, I don't know, she could do a Red Bull Rich Energy taste test on camera.
Excellent. I'd be up for that.
Freya says it legit does, so it legit does taste like Red Bull, just stronger. Okay.
Basically with a different tin.
Well...
Anyway, right.
Okay, moving on.
And,
we have some NASCAR
I also put, bring back Moneytron.
Referring to the... Okay, never mind. NASCAR?
Yes. This actually broke today, according to Racer.com. Marshall Pruitt picked that name up. Dallara Automobili, which is build cars for IndyCar, the Daytona Prototype International, LMP2, and some Formula One cars over the years, has been tipped to build the new chassis for the NASCAR Gen 7 Cup Series car. Which is going to be quite interesting to see at some point. Because if anyone knows how to build safe and reliable cars with good on-track product, it's Dallara.
Laura, please hire me. Can I have my money now?
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Can I have my money now? But yeah, Dallara is honestly, genuinely one of the best and safest constructors in the sport at the moment, as far as chassis constructors. And just looking at their previous work, there's quite a bit of open wheel. They also have the new Stradale, which is the new supercar.
I mean, really, they haven't done that much other than the Indy car.
No, they have.
Oh, Dalara's done a heckload of things. If you look on Wikipedia at just the things that they've done, their CV is immense. Along with,
I was joking. It's just like I was joking. It's like, oh, you know, they haven't really done very much other than the Indy car
Okay.
and the Super Formula car and the Formula E car and now the Gen 7 car
and a Formula One team. They had a they had their own Formula One team from '88 through to 92. Scored 2 podiums, and also made the first ever HRT F1 car as well. Not sure.
And the iconic Ferrari 333 SP World Sports Car.
Oh wow. Okay.
As well.
Yeah, Dalara's done a heckload.
Along with the Toyota GT1, the Dallara SP1 prototype, and the Audi R8
cars
LMP,
as well, which includes the Cadillac DPI cars.
and the GSP2. Not GSP2. That's a Ligier.
Yes, it is.
It's a Ligier, you idiot.
Yeah, made by Dallara.
Yes, Ligier by Dallara.
Be like
The
saying McLaren by Ferrari.
P217 is what it's called. They also apparently have worked on the Huracan Super Trofeo and GT3. And the RS01 and the Haas.
Oh, Haas.
Hey, Haas.
Anyway, we have some general motorsport news as well. Simon Pagenaud has actually said that his Penske teammate Juan Pablo Montoya could win the Triple Crown before Fernando Alonso. And Triple Crown.
Pick that name up.
But, well, Juan Pablo Montoya has already won 2 legs of the Triple Crown, and so has Fernando Alonso. However, Juan Pablo Montoya will be, he'll be doing Le Mans as well in the not too distant future. He could actually win the Triple Crown before Fernando Alonso does, and also he's racing full time in sports cars as well. So Simon Pagenaud thinks that Juan Pablo Montoya could actually do it before Fernando Alonso, which would be very interesting actually.
I think he absolutely
No
could.
jet dryers.
Yeah, no, I think he absolutely could. All he needs is a top drive in Le Mans. That's going to be tricky with Toyota. Although if something happens to the Toyotas and he's in a top LMP1 privateer, or if he gets a drive with a good hypercar team, then who knows? But anyway.
Well, he did actually test an LMP1 car, if I remember correctly. He tested a Porsche a few years ago in just after the WC season ended in Bahrain. He actually tested the Porsche. What was it called? The 919.
Yeah, was that when Pietro Fittipaldi and Fernando Alonso also tested some sports cars as well?
I believe so. Yeah.
Who else was there? I think there were a few other drivers there as well. I can't remember them though.
Oh, I'm trying to remember, actually. It's been so long. But, yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I'd like to see Juan Pablo Montoya run. He does have one previous start, driving for United Autosport in, I believe, 2018.
Yes, that's correct, 2018. Because I remember I said the same thing last year. I said, "Oh, Juan Pablo Montoya could win the Triple Crown before Fernando Alonso does." But then the LMP2 car, well, I think that was a rather ill-fated race for United Autosports. It didn't go particularly well for them.
The problem was he was in a Ligier when everyone else drove Oricas.
Also, we have some WEC news as well. So, Pastor Maldonado will not be racing with Dragon Speed this weekend. This is a slightly older story, but just in case you hadn't heard, your favourite Crashter will not be racing in the Dragon Speed this weekend. He has left. Well, he's actually left that team and won't be racing in the WEC
I thought
this
he
year.
was driving for. I thought he was driving for Joda Sport.
Apparently not. Apparently, he's not driving with anyone.
Now, I will say, Caitlin, is it Formula 3 that his cousin was racing in it?
Manuel Maldonado. He was doing British Formula 3 last year. I'm not entirely sure if he's doing anything this year.
Because apparently Manuel Maldonado, he was actually he made a sensational move just at the top of Eau Rouge.
That was British F3
through the grass.
Yeah, he is doing British F3 this year as well. He actually just won Race 2 at Silverstone last round, and he's currently 7th in that championship, so, yeah, good for him.
Is Manuel Maldonado related to Automatic Maldonado?
Manuel Maldonado, actually, I'll have you know.
Dear. Anyway,
actually,
right,
it's I think I went to school with his older sister, Paddle Shift.
Okie dokie. Matt Brabham will be racing in Super 5000 in Formula
5000.
Yeah.
S5000.
S5000, that's what you call it. Formula Super whatever 5000 thingy in Australia. Making him, I think, the second confirmed driver for that series so far, along with Rubens Barrichello. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a good year. Good to have Matt Brabham there as well. He's an Australian professional racing driver, very well known, and yeah, it's gonna be good.
And he's been running recently in the Stadium Super Trucks series. So is there really anything he can't do?
He has
indeed. He's been really impressive in everything.
Very young as well.
I think Matt Brabham and Rubens Barrichello, well, from what I can tell so far, they're only confirmed for the first round at Sandown. So I don't know what's going on. So I don't think there are even any confirmed full-time drivers of full-time teams in the season yet. However, it's nice to have two very high-profile drivers actually confirmed to be racing in the series in some respect. So that's quite good. And I wouldn't mind going to see some S5000 stuff. So rather good if I could get myself a ticket to one of the races. And hopefully S5000 actually does eventually come to Sydney Motorsport Park in its opening season. And I think that's about time to end. So we're at Motorsport recently, and we're back after the summer break. My name is Jack McKenzie, and joining me on the mic today has been the wonderful Chris Whitfield and Caitlin Penny commentary, accompanied with the wonderful graphic that you have seen on screen that was made by @FinnickArrow on Instagram. He did wonderful graphics. Check out the link in the description below. He also helped with the WEC season review that came out during the week. So anyway, we're back. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye, guys.
Ta-ra.